Chapter 7. Achievements and Unspoken Fears. Elena had come a long way since she first arrived in Country a place where the pain of her past seemed so distant now. She had graduated from her master's program, earning accolades for her writing. What had started as a means of healing had turned into a full-fledged career. Her books, filled with raw emotion and the beauty of new beginnings, had struck a chord with readers around the world. She was starting to become a name that people recognized. As she sat in her cozy apartment one evening, glancing through the latest manuscript that was set to be published, Elena felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had made it. She was a published author, a rising literary star. The recognition she had worked so hard for was finally here, and she had done it on her own terms. Mia, who had become more than just a friend, was now her literary agent, handling everything from contracts to negotiations. The two of them worked together seamlessly. Mia was the practical, business-minded one, while Elena was the creative spirit who poured her soul into every word she wrote. It was a partnership that had grown stronger over the years, and Elena couldn't imagine navigating her career without Mia by her side. Her parents still visited her once a year during the holidays. Their presence was always a welcome comfort, but as they grew older, their quiet, unspoken concerns about Elena's future had become more pronounced. They always wanted to know if she was happy, if she was content in her life in Country A. And of course they asked the same question each time they visited. When are you going to settle down, Elena? You're 30 now. It's time to think about starting a family. We'd love to have grandchildren. Elena always smiled and nodded, her heart caught between the desire to honor their wishes and the fear that had gripped her since that fateful rejection all those years ago. Her parents had always been supportive, but the older they got, the more insistent they became about the idea of marriage and children. It was as if they could not imagine a future for her without it. She had tried to date since that painful chapter with Lucas. A few fleeting relationships, some casual, others a bit more serious, but none had ever felt right. There was always something holding her back, something deep inside that told her not to fully open her heart. The rejection, the loss, the feelings of unworthiness, they had all left scars on her soul that no one had been able to heal. In her quiet moments, when she wasn't immersed in her writing, Elena couldn't help but think about the life she had built for herself. On the outside it seemed perfect. She had a successful career, wonderful friends, and a life in a city that felt like home. But deep down, a part of her still longed for something more. A family, someone to share her days with. She knew she had the capacity for love, but the fear of being hurt again was always lurking just beneath the surface. There were nights when she would lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she would ever be able to truly fall in love again. Her heart longed for the warmth of companionship, but her mind held on to the memories of the past, the hurt, and the uncertainty. How could she give her heart to someone when it had been shattered so completely before? But there were moments, brief ones, when she would catch herself thinking of a future that wasn't just about work, writing, and success. A future where she was surrounded by a family, laughter, and love. Yet the thought always felt like a distant dream, something she couldn't quite grasp. One chilly evening, as Elena sat in a local cafe working on a new book idea, her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. It was a simple text, but the words sent a ripple of unease through her. Elena, we miss you. Your father and I are getting older. We just want to see you happy with someone who will love you like we do. Don't wait too long. You deserve to have it all. Elena put her phone down, feeling the weight of the message settle on her chest. She loved her parents deeply, but their expectations, their hopes for her, seemed to carry more burden with each passing year. She had worked so hard to build this life for herself, but she couldn't help but wonder if there was something missing. Was there a piece of herself she had left behind in the process of chasing her dreams? Mia, ever the perceptive friend, noticed Elena's quiet demeanor during their next meeting. They were sitting in a small cafe by the river, where Elena often went to write when she needed space to think. You're quiet today, Mia remarked, her eyes glinting with curiosity. What's going on? Elena hesitated, swirling the coffee in her cup before looking up. My parents texted me this morning. They're worried about me. They keep asking when I'm going to settle down. They want grandchildren, Mia. Mia's gaze softened. I know you've been avoiding love for a while now, but it's okay to want that. It's okay to feel scared too. Elena sighed, her heart heavy. I'm not sure I can do it again. I've been hurt so badly, Mia. I don't know if I can trust anyone with my heart anymore. Mia reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You don't have to rush. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But don't let fear keep you from living a life full of possibilities either. You're a beautiful person inside and out, and you deserve someone who will appreciate you for who you are, not just as a writer or a successful woman. When you're ready, you'll know. As Elena walked home that evening, the cool breeze on her face, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Maybe she could open her heart again. Maybe she could let go of the fear that had held her back for so long. But for now, she knew she needed to focus on herself. She had built a life that was meaningful, that gave her purpose. And one day, when the time was right, she would be ready for love again. But until then, Elena chose to embrace the life she had. Her work, her books, her friendships. She was whole on her own, and while the idea of a family was something she still dreamed about, she knew that she was the one who held the power to shape her future. Chapter 8. Reunion. Unexpected. It had been 10 long years since Elena had left her home in City C. Over the years she had built a life for herself in Country A, one filled with success, independence, and healing from the heartaches of the past. But when the call came, it shattered the quiet rhythm of her life. Her mother's voice on the other end of the line was filled with distress. Elena, you need to come back. Your father. He needs to undergo bypass surgery. It's urgent. The words hit Elena like a punch to the gut. She had spoken to her father just a week ago and everything had seemed fine. The thought of him in a hospital bed undergoing such a serious operation was unfathomable. He couldn't believe it. Elena? Are you there? Her mother's voice cut through her shock. I'm coming home, Elena whispered, already reaching for her calendar and organizing her travel plans. Without hesitation, Elena packed a small suitcase, canceled her appointments, and booked the earliest flight back to City C. It wasn't just the distance or the time zone that had kept her away. It was also the memories of her past, the unfinished business with family, and the bittersweet recollections of the people who had once filled her life. But none of that mattered now. Her father needed her. As the plane touched down in City C, Elena felt a mixture of anxiety and trepidation. The city had changed in the 10 years she'd been gone. New buildings dotted the skyline, but the familiar streets, the old park by the river and the cozy cafes, those were still the same. She rushed to the hospital as soon as she could, the familiar scent of antiseptic and the hum of fluorescent lights overwhelming her senses. When she arrived, her mother was waiting for her outside her father's room, her face pale and streaked with tears. Elena, her mother's voice trembled as she pulled her into an embrace. Your father, he's... Elena held her mother tightly, not knowing what to say. The last time she had seen her father, he was full of energy, always teasing her about getting older. But now he was the one in need of care, and it scared Elena more than she could admit. Edward, her cousin, stood nearby, his face etched with concern. His usually easygoing demeanor had been replaced with a serious, almost somber air. He stepped forward, his eyes searching hers. Ed, what's going on? Elena asked, her voice thick with emotion. Edward sighed, running a hand through his hair. He has a blockage in one of the arteries, and if they don't perform the bypass soon, it could get worse. Elena nodded numbly, her world momentarily crashing down around her. It was a lot to process, and she found herself overwhelmed with a sense of helplessness she hadn't felt in years. They're going to explain everything in detail shortly, Edward continued. But for now, just know that it's a routine procedure. Uncle will be okay. Elena tried to muster a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She couldn't shake the fear that gripped her chest. Just as Edward finished speaking, the door to her father's room creaked open. Elena looked up, expecting to see a doctor. But instead, her breath caught in her throat as she saw the last person she ever expected to encounter. Lucas. He stood in the doorway, his presence as commanding as ever, though there was a maturity to him now. His dark hair was shorter, his once boyish features now sculpted with age. His sharp jawline, the same one that had once been the subject of Elena's endless daydreams, was now softened with a look of concern. His eyes, the same deep brown she remembered, locked onto hers. For a moment neither of them spoke. Time seemed to stretch between them, a decade of silence and distance hanging in the air like a veil. "Lucas," Elena whispered almost to herself. He hadn't changed much. Still handsome, still powerful in presence. But there was something different about him. He was no longer the golden boy who had left her heartbroken. He was someone who had lived, who had experienced things she could only imagine. He met her gaze and smiled, though it was faint, more out of politeness than genuine warmth. "Elena," he said quietly, stepping forward. Before he could finish, Edward stepped between them, his usual protective nature flaring up. "Lucas is one of the attending physicians for your father's surgery, Edward said, his voice firm but not unkind. "He's been handling the preparations for the procedure." Elena's heart skipped a beat and she forced herself to look at Lucas again. The news felt surreal. Lucas, the same man who had never returned her feelings, was now going to play a key role in her father's surgery. It was strange. A strange twist of fate. Lucas's gaze softened slightly. "We'll take care of him." Elena nodded, trying to steady her emotions. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. A long silence fell between them, the weight of history and unspoken words filling the room. As Lucas glanced at her one last time, he spoke in a soft tone. "I'll keep you updated on your father's condition. The surgery will go smoothly. I promise." Then with a final nod he stepped back, leaving the room with the same cool professionalism he always had. Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. For a moment she had almost hoped that things could have been different between them. But time had a way of reshaping people, and she had long ago learned that the past couldn't be rewritten. Her father's surgery was the focus now. But as she stood there in the hospital room, the ache in her chest wasn't just from the worry about her father's health. It was from the haunting presence of Lucas and the complicated feelings he stirred within her. The next few days would be filled with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Her world had just shifted again. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what was to come. Chapter 9. Cold Rejection. Lucas opened the door to the hospital room and for a split second his breath caught in his throat. There she was, Elena. After 10 long years of silence, of distance, of trying to bury what had once been so important to him. There she was, standing in front of him. A slight flutter of happiness stirred in his heart, and for a moment he didn't understand what it meant. It wasn't the kind of happiness he had expected to feel after all this time, not when everything had ended the way it had. But seeing her, seeing the woman she had become, stirred something deep within him. She had matured. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. But it wasn't just her physical appearance that had changed. It was the quiet confidence, the grace, the way she stood there, unshaken by time. He had promised himself he wouldn't let emotions get in the way of his duties today, but the moment he saw her, those words seemed meaningless. "Elena," he whispered, unsure of what else to say. He had no idea how to begin this conversation after so many years. "Elena, I'll be the attending surgeon for your father," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He quickly moved into the professional mode he was trained in, discussing the preparations needed for the surgery. The words came out of his mouth automatically as his gaze lingered on her, hoping she wouldn't notice the tension in his shoulders, the hesitation in his voice. As he finished explaining the details of the procedure, he couldn't help but ask, "How have you been all these years, Elena?" But her response was colder than he expected, almost too calm. "I've been pretty good," she said, her voice flat, almost indifferent. Something in his chest tightened at her words. Why did it hurt so much? Why did those simple words pierce him? He had expected this, he knew he had hurt her so deeply back then. But hearing her speak with that coldness, that distance, made him feel the weight of his actions in a way he hadn't before. Edward, who had been standing off to the side, caught his eye and gave him a slight smile, almost as if he were aware of something between them that neither Lucas nor Elena wanted to acknowledge. The tension was palpable and it made Lucas feel both vulnerable and exposed. He had never been good at dealing with this kind of awkwardness. He wasn't sure how to make things right or if it was even possible anymore. The conversation drifted, but the emotional distance between him and Elena remained. It was clear that she had moved on, that she had healed in ways that he still hadn't. He knew he couldn't just step back into her life and expect things to be the same. But still, the pull he felt toward her was undeniable. As the medical details were wrapped up and her mother urged Elena to go home and rest, Lucas watched her stand up. His eyes followed her as she made her way toward the door. His heart thudded with an ache he couldn't quite explain, but as the door closed behind her, he stayed rooted in place, fighting the urge to follow. Later, as he stepped out of the hospital, he found himself unexpectedly waiting. He had finished his rounds, but his mind was still with Elena. He couldn't shake the thought of her, of the years apart and the strange, unresolved feelings between them. As he stood in the hospital lobby, he caught sight of Elena again, making her way toward the exit. Without thinking, he walked outside and climbed into his black car, knowing that this might be his only chance to offer a simple gesture of kindness, something he could give her without expecting anything in return. The car pulled up to her just as she stepped outside. He rolled down the window and, with a calmness he didn't entirely feel, called out to her. "Elena, let me take you home," he offered, hoping she would accept. But Elena didn't hesitate for a second. She glanced at him, her eyes colder than before, and without a single word, she turned away. She walked right past his car and hopped into the taxi that had just arrived. The rejection hit him harder than he had anticipated. There was no flicker of recognition, no softening of her expression, nothing. Just a cold dismissal. He sat there, stunned for a moment, the pain in his chest sharper than anything he had ever felt. He had expected her to be indifferent, but the way she refused without a second thought, without even sparing him a glance, hurt more than he could ever have imagined. The taxi drove off and Lucas remained in his car, staring after her. He didn't know why it mattered so much. Maybe it was because, deep down, he had hoped, wished, for something more, for a chance to reconnect, to heal the rift between them. But that hope had just been shattered in the span of a few seconds. As the black car pulled away, he felt something deep within him shift. Maybe it was too late for anything to change. Maybe they were too far gone. But in that moment, as Elena's taxi disappeared into the distance, Lucas couldn't help but feel the crushing weight of what he had lost. Chapter 10. Lingering tension. The day of the operation finally arrived, and Elena was a bundle of nerves, unable to sit still. It had been hours since she last heard anything about her father's condition, and the weight of the waiting room felt suffocating. She was terrified of losing him, terrified that the man who had always been her rock might not make it through the procedure. It felt as though the clock was ticking in slow motion as she glanced at the sterile white walls around her, each second feeling like an eternity. The doctors had warned her that it would be a long surgery, 8 hours of intense work to repair the damage in her father's heart. And all she could do was wait. The moment the door to the waiting area opened, Elena's heart skipped a beat. A doctor stepped in and she immediately rose to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. It was Lucas. His eyes met hers, and for a brief second she caught herself feeling a flutter in her chest, but she quickly pushed it away. She had no room for feelings like that. Not now, not anymore. "Elena," Lucas said softly, his voice calm but with a hint of fatigue. "The operation was successful. Your father is stable and now we just need to monitor him in the ICU for a while. Once things improve, he'll be moved to a private room." Relief surged through Elena, and for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe again. She blinked back tears, not wanting to fall apart in front of him. But despite the relief, there was something else, something unfamiliar stirring inside her as she met his gaze. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky but full of gratitude. Lucas nodded, then paused for a moment, looking as though he wanted to say something more. She could feel his eyes on her, but she couldn't bring herself to meet them for long. She was afraid of what she might see there, or what he might see in hers. "I'll be checking in regularly," he said, his tone professional but not cold. After a long silence, Elena's mother appeared, urging her to get some rest. "You've been here all day, honey. Let me take care of your father for a little while," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You need to rest." Elena nodded, too tired to argue. As she stood in the hospital room watching her father slowly recover, she felt something heavy lift from her chest. The worst was over. The long days of waiting, the uncertainty that had gnawed at her, had finally given way to relief. Still, the emotional toll of the past weeks hadn't been easy to shake off. She had stayed by his side, barely sleeping, her mind constantly on edge. But now, as she looked at her father in his hospital bed, now breathing steadily and surrounded by the steady hum of the machines keeping him under observation, she knew it was time to breathe, time to let go of the fear. The day of his discharge finally arrived, and while Elena felt nothing but relief, she couldn't ignore the nagging sense of dread that still lingered in her chest. Lucas had been a constant presence at the hospital, checking in on her father, always with that calm professionalism she had grown used to. Yet every time he approached her she could feel the walls between them, thick and impenetrable. She had tried to move past the old wounds, tried to push away the memories of the rejection she'd felt, the feelings she'd buried so deep within herself. But as she watched Lucas speak to her father, she realized that some things, no matter how hard she tried, didn't simply disappear. It was hard to ignore him when he was right there offering help and support. Yet every time he asked her to grab a coffee or talk, she politely refused. She couldn't bring herself to engage with him, not when the past was still so fresh in her mind, when the hurt was still raw. The emotional distance between them grew with each passing day. And though Lucas tried to bridge the gap to reach her, Elena remained cold. She knew it wasn't fair that she was holding on to old grudges, but it was the only way she knew how to protect herself. Lucas stopped by to finalize the paperwork. There was a hint of familiarity in the way he spoke, his tone almost gentle, as though trying to break through her walls. "I can help you get him home, Elena. It's the least I can do," Lucas offered, his voice quiet, his eyes sincere. She shook her head, trying to smile but finding it hard to do so. "No, Lucas. Thank you, but we'll manage. I can take care of him." Her refusal was firm but not cruel. She was simply stating the facts, she didn't need his help. Lucas nodded, though she could see the faint disappointment in his eyes. She turned away from him and went to help her father out of the room. Her back was turned to Lucas as she gently guided her father toward the exit, careful with every step. The hospital's cold walls felt colder in that moment, the weight of all that had happened pressing down on her. Her mother, who had been quiet through it all, gave a stiff but polite nod to Lucas as she passed him. There were no words of thanks or acknowledgement, and Lucas could feel the tension in the air. He had hoped, foolishly, that things might change, that there would be a moment where they could talk. But the past had left its mark, and Elena had made it clear she wasn't ready to let go of the hurt. As the car drove away, Lucas stood in the hospital lobby for a long moment, staring after them. He felt a pang in his chest, one that he couldn't ignore. He had wanted to be the one to help her, to make amends for everything that had happened, but she had drawn a line that he wasn't sure could ever be crossed. And maybe, just maybe, that was the hardest part of all. Chapter 11. Realization and Resolve. Lucas couldn't help but feel the weight of sadness settle in his chest every time he visited Elena's father for a checkup. She refused to even look at him, her gaze always avoiding his, as if she couldn't bear to face him. Her mother, on the other hand, would always exchange pleasantries, keeping the conversation going while Elena made excuses to leave the room or avoid being anywhere near him. It was like an unspoken barrier between them, one that hurt him more than he could ever have imagined. Each time Elena distanced herself, his heart clenched. He hadn't realized it before, but now it was undeniable. Every time she turned away from him, it felt like a weight he couldn't shake. "Why does it hurt so much?" he thought. "Why does it feel like a dagger to the chest whenever she avoids me?" And then it hit him. "I'm in love with her." At first he tried to deny it. He convinced himself it was just a fleeting feeling, a crush that would fade with time. "I'm older than her," he told himself. "It's just some silly infatuation, it'll pass." But the more he tried to ignore it, the stronger the feelings grew. And soon he realized the truth that had been staring him in the face all along. "I'm completely, hopelessly in love with Elena." He thought back to their past, to the time when he had acted cold toward her. He remembered when Edward had first suggested that he speak to her cousin. At the time, he hadn't realized that Elena was already harboring feelings for him. When she confessed, he had been firm, almost cruel. He rejected her, telling himself it was for her own good. She deserves someone better. I'm not the one for her, he had convinced himself. But in reality, he just couldn't face the idea of being with her, knowing that deep down he wasn't ready to open his heart to anyone, let alone someone as wonderful as Elena. As time went on, he dated Shannon. Their relationship, though built on mutual respect, was never what he had wanted. He didn't love Shannon the way he loved Elena, and he knew it from the start. They had been together since high school, and throughout their years in college he kept telling himself that things would work out. But they didn't. Not in the way he had hoped. During their third year of medical school, Lucas and Shannon became exchange students in Country B. It was there that Shannon met her ex-boyfriend again. And just like that, their relationship ended. She married her ex and they had a son together. Lucas was genuinely happy for her. He knew that they had both needed each other to heal from past wounds, but their relationship had never been built on romantic love. Shannon, always insightful, had said to him one day, "I know there's someone in your heart, Lucas. You used me to stop Elena from liking you. But I know now. I understand. We were never meant to be more than friends. We were just two people helping each other get over someone else." Her words stung, but they were the truth. They had been more like comrades than lovers, and deep down Lucas had always known it. Lucas learned from Edward that Elena had gone to study abroad. It was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that she was so far away. But he never imagined it would take 10 years for her to return. He never imagined that when she came back she would be as distant as she was, as cold as she had become. It had all been too much for him to face. Now, as he stood in the hospital watching her walk away again, her back turned, her heart seemingly closed off, he realized the truth he had been running from all these years. Elena will stay away from me forever. It was painful to accept, but deep down Lucas knew it was inevitable. His rejection all those years ago had scarred her. And now, as an adult, he could finally see it. But he had lost his chance. He had pushed her away and she had moved on. Maybe this was what he deserved. To live with the regret of not fighting for her when he had the chance. But in that moment something inside Lucas clicked. He wouldn't give up. He couldn't. He had spent too many years trying to bury his feelings, but now he knew better. This wasn't something that could just go away. This was real. And even if it took everything he had, he wouldn't let it slip away without trying again. He watched Elena for a moment longer, her back still turned to him, her figure growing smaller as she walked away. No, he thought. I'm not going to let this go. I don't care how many years have passed. I love her. And I'll do whatever it takes to show her that. He wasn't sure how it would play out. He wasn't sure if she would ever forgive him, or if she would even want to give him a chance after everything that had happened. But he had to try. For the first time in his life, Lucas realized that sometimes you have to fight for the things that matter most. As Elena got into the car, he made a silent vow to himself. I won't let her slip away again. I'll fight for us. I'll fight for her. With that, Lucas finally let out a deep breath, his resolve strengthening. Whatever happened next, he wasn't going to walk away without giving his heart the chance to love Elena properly this time. Chapter 12. The Road to Redemption. After days of wrestling with his thoughts, Lucas knew one thing for sure. He had let Elena slip away for far too long. Now he had to do everything in his power to make things right. He wasn't the same person he had been 10 years ago. Back then he had been caught up in his own pride, his fears, and his inability to open up. But now, as he watched Elena walk through life with a cool indifference to his presence, he realized just how much he had lost. And this time he wasn't going to stand by and do nothing. The first thing Lucas did was seek out Edward. He knew if there was anyone who understood Elena better than anyone else, it was Edward. They had been close since their school days, and Edward had always had a knack for seeing through people's facades. Lucas trusted him with his life, so it only made sense that he'd turn to him now. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, Lucas found Edward in the coffee shop they frequented. He wasted no time in getting to the point. Edward, Lucas started, his voice steady but his eyes betraying his desperation. I need your help. I've been an idiot and I need to make things right with Elena. I need to pursue her. I can't keep pretending like everything's okay, like I don't care. I do care. A lot. Edward leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable as he listened to Lucas. After a few moments of silence, he finally spoke. You know, it's about time, Edward said, his lips curling into a half-smile. I've been waiting for you to realize that. I've seen how you've been hurting Lucas. And honestly, you've made your fair share of mistakes. But if you're serious about this, I'll help you. Elena, she's been through a lot. And you don't just waltz back into her life after all this time. You've got to earn her trust. Lucas nodded, knowing full well that earning her trust was going to take time, but he was willing to do whatever it took. I've already screwed up, Lucas admitted, his voice low. But I'll be patient. I'll prove to her that I'm not the same person I was. I'll show her that I'm willing to fight for her. Edward's gaze softened. Good. But you'll need to be strategic about it. She's built walls around herself. She won't let you back in just like that. You're going to have to be patient, persistent, and most of all, consistent. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling both nervous and determined. What do you suggest? Edward smiled knowingly. Start with small gestures. Don't bombard her. Let her see the change in you. Let her see that you're not the guy who rejected her all those years ago. If you truly want her back, you're going to have to show her that you've changed, not just say it. Lucas felt a spark of hope at Edward's words. He had never been good at patience. He was always the one who took action without thinking it through. But this time he was determined to do it right. Lucas didn't waste any time. He began with small, thoughtful actions just like Edward had suggested. He wasn't going to overwhelm Elena, but he wanted her to know that he was there, that he was trying. Chapter 13. The Pursuit. Lucas didn't waste any time. He began with small, thoughtful actions just like Edward had suggested. He wasn't going to overwhelm Elena, but he wanted her to know that he was there, that he was trying. One morning while she was at her father's house, Lucas sent her a simple message. I know things between us have been complicated, but I just wanted to check in. I hope you're doing okay. It was a neutral message, nothing too personal, but it was a start. He knew that Elena needed space, but he also needed her to see that he cared. Her response was brief, almost indifferent. Thanks, Lucas. I'm fine. It stung, but Lucas didn't give up. The next day he made sure to drop by her father's house with a box of her favorite pastries. He knew she loved them from when they were younger. When she answered the door, her surprise was evident, but she said nothing. She just stood there looking at him. It felt like a million questions hung between them, but he didn't say a word. He just handed her the box and smiled. Your dad's recovery is going well. I just thought you might need something sweet today, he said, keeping his tone light. She didn't say anything at first, just took the box. Then after a long pause she simply nodded. Thanks, Lucas. She wasn't warm. She wasn't welcoming. But she didn't slam the door in his face either. Lucas soon realized that his attempts were making Elena feel a little more than just indifferent. As the days passed, whenever he showed up, Elena seemed to grow more and more annoyed with his presence. One day, Lucas visited her father for a routine checkup. As always, he asked Elena if she wanted to grab a coffee afterward. But this time she didn't even hide her irritation. I'm fine, Lucas, she said, cutting him off before he could even finish his sentence. I really don't need you checking in on me like this. Her words stung, but Lucas kept his expression neutral. He could tell she was annoyed and he understood why. After all, they had so much unresolved history. But he couldn't give up now. All right, Elena, he said softly, his gaze steady. I'll leave you to it. But know that I'm here. If you need anything. She gave him a curt nod, barely looking at him as she turned away. Lucas watched her for a moment before leaving, his chest aching from the coldness she still held toward him. Despite the occasional cold reception, Lucas didn't back down. He continued his small gestures, sometimes leaving small gifts for her father, sometimes offering help with things around the house, and occasionally checking in with her, but always being careful not to overwhelm her. It wasn't long before he began to notice subtle changes. One afternoon, after another brief but polite conversation about her father's health, Elena didn't immediately walk away. Instead, she lingered by the door, looking at him for a moment longer than usual. You're still stubborn, you know, she said, her voice quieter now, not as defensive. I'm not giving up on us, Lucas replied simply, his eyes sincere. She sighed, clearly exhausted by their constant back and forth. I don't know, Lucas. I don't know if I can just forgive and forget all the things. I'm not asking for that, Lucas said. I'm just asking for a chance. A real one. I want to make things right. I won't make the same mistakes again. There was a long pause. For a moment, Elena didn't speak. But Lucas could see the walls she'd carefully built around herself beginning to crack. I'm not saying I'll trust you again overnight, she replied, her tone a little softer now. But I appreciate that you're not giving up. Lucas smiled, hope surging within him. I won't give up on you, Elena. Over the next few weeks, Elena continued to show signs of softening. She wasn't as quick to shut him down, and there were moments where she almost seemed to let her guard down. It wasn't much, but Lucas could see that she was starting to let him in, little by little. One evening, Lucas decided to take a different approach. Instead of asking to meet her for coffee, he sent her a message. No pressure. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. Hope your day's been kind to you. It was simple. But when she replied later that night, her message was surprisingly warm. It was better than I expected. Thanks for checking in. Lucas smiled, his heart lifting. He wasn't there yet, but this was progress. And he wasn't about to stop. Lucas was learning that patience was key. Every time Elena pulled away, every time she showed a little annoyance, he understood a little more. It was going to be a long road, but he was in it for the long haul. And he wouldn't give up until he proved to her that he was worth her trust, and her heart. Chapter 14. The Breaking Point. The book launch was a milestone for Elena. She had spent years pouring her heart into her work, and now, with the release of her 5th book, the room was filled with people who admired her talent and dedication. The launch was held at a small but elegant venue, packed with friends, family, and colleagues. Elena stood at the front, beaming as she spoke about her work, answering questions from the guests with grace and ease. Lucas stood among the crowd, watching her. He had come to show his support, even if it meant standing in the shadows. He hadn't asked for any special attention. After all, he wasn't here to steal the spotlight. But in that moment he couldn't tear his eyes away from her. He was proud of her, proud of the woman she had become. She was no longer the girl he had known all those years ago. Elena had evolved, matured, and now she stood before everyone, strong and confident, commanding attention with her every word. And he had missed it. He had missed her. As the evening went on, Lucas couldn't deny the tension that had been building inside him. Every moment he spent around her, every passing glance, every polite but distant exchange, they all brought him closer to the point of no return. The guests eventually began to trickle out, leaving the venue quieter and more intimate. Elena, though exhausted from the event, stayed behind to thank everyone and handle the last of the details. Lucas watched from across the room, his heart heavy with longing. He couldn't stand the distance between them any longer. He couldn't pretend that the years of avoiding each other had done anything but deepen the ache in his chest. Finally, as the last of the guests left, Elena made her way to a quiet corner of the room, slipping off her shoes and letting out a long sigh. She seemed tired, the weight of the evening finally catching up with her. Lucas moved toward her, his steps slow but deliberate. He wasn't sure what he was about to do, but he knew it was something he had to do. Elena, he called softly, his voice steady but full of emotion. She looked up, startled for a moment before she recognized him. Her expression was guarded as always, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. A hesitation, a curiosity. I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, Lucas said, his voice raw with sincerity. You've worked so hard for this. You deserve every bit of success. Her lips curved into a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thanks, Lucas. I appreciate it. There was a brief silence between them. Lucas could feel the pull, the magnetic force drawing him to her, the tension hanging thick in the air. He could see it in the way she stood, poised but distant. She was still holding on to the walls she had built around herself. But he wasn't going to let her push him away this time. He couldn't. I've tried, Elena, he said, his voice soft but insistent. I've tried to move on, to let go, but I can't. I can't stop thinking about you. I've been a fool, rejecting you, hurting you. And now I just want you to know that I've changed. I'm not the same person I was before." She took a step back, her brow furrowed. "Lucas, this isn't the time. It's been years. We can't just pick up where we left off." "I'm not asking you to," he replied quickly, his voice thick with emotion. I need you to know how I feel." Elena's face softened for a brief moment, but her defenses quickly went back up. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. Lucas stepped forward, his heart pounding. He couldn't take it anymore. He had tried everything: patience, distance, quiet support, but it was never enough. Not when his feelings for her were so intense, so consuming. He was done waiting. Without thinking, he closed the distance between them and cupped her face gently in his hands. Before she could react, Lucas kissed her. His lips pressed gently against hers, tentative at first, as if he was unsure whether she would push him away. But the moment their lips met, the years of silence, of regret, and of longing flooded over him. He poured every ounce of his emotion into that kiss, hoping she could feel the truth of it. Elena froze, her body stiff in his arms, but Lucas didn't pull away. He couldn't. He kissed her again, this time more urgently, his hands threading through her hair as he pulled her closer, giving her no chance to escape. For a long moment she didn't respond, and Lucas began to wonder if he had gone too far. But then, just as his heart began to break with the fear of rejection, he felt the slightest shift. Elena's lips moved against his, soft and hesitant at first, but then with growing intensity, as if she couldn't hold back anymore. Her hands slowly rose to his chest, and for the first time in years, Lucas felt her fingers linger there. She didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed him back. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them. No history, no pain, just the shared, aching desire between them. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless, their chests rising and falling in tandem. "Elena," Lucas whispered, his voice a plea. "Please don't shut me out. Please don't push me away again. I need you." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and full of conflict. I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off, Lucas," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "But maybe we can start again. Slowly." Lucas nodded, relief flooding through him, but he knew this was only the beginning. He had taken the first step, and now he would have to prove himself to her. Prove that this time he wasn't going to let her go. "I'm willing to take it slow," he said, his voice steady but full of hope. Chapter final: The sweetest acceptance. The days following the kiss had been a whirlwind for Elena. Her thoughts were clouded with confusion, her heart racing every time she remembered the way Lucas had kissed her that night. But as the days went by, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this was something she had been waiting for all along. Lucas had been patient, his persistence never wavering. After that night, he had continued to support her from the sidelines, never pushing her but always showing up. He attended her book launches, sent thoughtful messages, and when she needed him, he was there, just like he always had been. Slowly, Elena's walls, built over the years, began to crumble piece by piece. It wasn't an easy road, and it certainly wasn't without its moments of doubt. Elena struggled to reconcile the man she had once loved with the one who had hurt her, but each gesture, each word from Lucas, slowly erased the past and built something new. Then one evening, as she stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out over the city, Lucas arrived, just as he always did, the smile that had never left his face now finally giving her the peace she needed. "Elena," he began, his voice soft but steady as he stepped up behind her. She turned to him, her heart fluttering. "Can we talk?" She nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Of course." Lucas took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers with a sincerity that made Elena's chest tighten. He had come to terms with the fact that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, no matter how long it took. He had waited for this moment, waited for her to be ready, and now he was ready to do what it took to show her how much she meant to him. "Elena, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes," Lucas started, his voice tinged with regret. "But every day I've spent without you, I've learned that you're the one I've always wanted. You're the one I want by my side, for everything. And if you'll have me, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making things right. I'm not asking you to forget the past, but to build something beautiful with me. Together. Elena's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing. She had heard those words before, but this time they felt different. She could see the vulnerability in his eyes, feel the sincerity in every word. Her mind flashed to the years they had spent apart, the pain, the growth, and now this. Was this the moment she had been waiting for? Lucas, she faltered, the emotions overwhelming her. It's not that simple. Lucas stepped closer, his hand gently taking hers. I know it's not, but I'll wait for you, Elena. I'll wait as long as it takes. The night seemed to stretch out before them as they stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city. It was as though time had stopped, leaving only the two of them. And in that silence, Elena realized something profound. All the years of heartache, the doubts, the fear, it had all led to this moment. This was her chance to let go of the past and accept the love that had never truly left her. I'm ready, she whispered, her voice full of emotion. I've been ready for so long, Lucas. Lucas's heart soared as he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. The weight of the years apart, the pain, the waiting, all of it felt worth it in that moment. And as they stood there holding each other, the world around them faded away. The next few weeks were filled with laughter, love, and the kind of quiet moments that spoke volumes. Lucas had always known what he wanted, but now he was ready to take the final step. He had something special planned, something that would seal their future together. One evening, after a quiet dinner at her favorite restaurant, Lucas took Elena's hand as they strolled through the park. The night air was cool, the stars twinkling above them, and everything felt perfect. Elena, he began, his voice filled with love, I know we've been through a lot. And I know I don't have the power to erase the past. But I do have the power to promise you my future. Will you be a part of it? He paused, pulling her to a stop in the middle of the path, beneath the glow of the lamppost. He knelt down, his heart pounding as he took her hand. Elena, will you marry me? The world seemed to stop, the question hanging in the air like a dream come true. Elena's heart swelled, her eyes brimming with tears. She had waited so long for this moment, and now here it was. Of course, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Lucas. Yes. As Lucas slipped the ring on her finger, they shared a kiss that sealed their past, their present, and their future. It was a promise that no matter what came, they would face it together. From that moment on, there was no more waiting, no more doubt, only the certainty that they had found each other again, and this time they were never letting go. The journey had been long, but in the end, it had led them exactly where they were meant to be, together. Copyright Maria Victoria, 2025. All rights reserved.